out there in internet land, my name is Tim, and this is Red Band Review. With Halloween just around the corner, here is another entry to our 31 Days of Horror, one of my personal favorite zombie movies, the 1985 cult classic, Return of the Living Dead.
In the dark of the night, something strange is going on.
Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Sure.
They ship those bodies. Well, say hello.
The dead have risen from the grave.
Mister, there's 100 of those things out there.
How many did you say?
100?
And now the question is, how do we get them back into the ground?
Bert, Frank, we have a little problem.
4 left, 10 right.
That goddamn chemical is all over everything! Stupid asshole! Watch your tongue, boy, if you like this job! Like this job!
Medical science is baffled.
And it's a puzzle, because technically, you're not alive.
Why do you eat people?
Not people. Brains.
How do you kill something that's already dead?
Well, how do I know, Fred? I don't know. Let me think.
It's not a bad question, Bert. In that movie, they destroyed the brain to kill him. Is that what they did? The brains, right.
Brains! Brain! The brain! I hit the brain! Oh! Get it off! 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 Get it off!
The military is nervous.
How was your day?
Usual crap.
The police are confused.
Send more cops.
It worked in the movie! Well, it ain't working now. Read the movie line!
It's not a bad question, Bert. It's not a bad question, Bert. It's not a bad question, Bert.
The return of the living dead.
This story starts off at the Unita Medical Supply Warehouse in Louisville, Kentucky, where a foreman named Frank tries to impress its newest employee, Freddy, by showing him some military drums that have shown up in a medical shipment by accident and are now being stored in the company's basement. Frank then accidentally unleashes a toxic gas from the military drum, rendering both himself and Freddy unconscious for a period of time. When they wake up, they realize that the toxic gas actually reanimated the cadaver that's up in the meat locker. Frank then contacts Bert, the owner of the business, to come help with the situation, and that's when all chaos and very bad decisions ensue. Meanwhile, Freddy's friends learn of his new job from his girlfriend Tina. The group consists of Spider, Suicide, Casey, Chuck, and my personal favorite, Trash. They decide to pick Freddy up after he finishes his shift and wait inside the local cemetery. Tina then leaves the graveyard and enters the warehouse to look for Freddy. Her search leads her down into the basement, where she unknowingly draws the attention of the half-melted corpse from the drum barrel, who was initially thought to have dissolved. Then she locks herself inside a metal locker, and that is when Tarman pursues. And one of the things that I really like about this movie is how they kind of elaborated on the zombies, where they're not just shambling corpses per se, where they have kind of personalities, and in this movie they can talk. And this is the movie that's responsible for the zombies going after brains. Instead of just eating human flesh, they developed a plot point where they go after brains because it numbs the pain of being dead, which I think is kind of cool. There's not really a zombie canon, so to speak. There's many different versions and variations of zombie stories and zombie movies and all that, and they all kind of have their own little, flavor. There is a basis to zombie movies, but with this one, they treaded new ground and they broke new ground. In particular with, zombies wanting brains. The story then shifts to the mortuary across the street where Bert, Frank, and Freddy decide to ask Bert's friend and mortician Ernie if he could use the crematorium and burn up the pieces of the cadaver. At first, Ernie is dead set against it and reluctantly agrees, saying that Bert owes him one. That is when they decide to put it in the oven and they burn up the body, causing the smoke that's coming from the chimney to go up into the atmosphere and come back down as toxic rain. It's during this time that the group of Freddy's friends at the graveyard are treated to a very risque, very awesome little striptease by my personal favorite, Trash. Then the rain comes down and they are leaving, and because, it's acid rain, it's burning their skin. And that's when they start hearing a noise coming from the graveyard. It sounds like a banging, a thud, and then all of a sudden the reanimated corpses washed in acid rain start popping out of their graves and looking for human flesh and brains. While the group is running away, Trash then gets surrounded and eaten by zombies, ironically dying the exact same way she described earlier as the worst way for her to die. Tina, Spider, and Scuzz go to the mortuary. Chuck and Casey head back to the warehouse where Tarman remains trapped downstairs. Now, there's a lot of interesting trivia with this movie. Far too much to go into with this episode, so I'll just bring up a couple things that I found very interesting. First, John Russo, one of the creators and co-writers with George Romero for the original Night of the Living Dead, actually wrote the original script to this movie, Return of the Living Dead. The script was then bought by an independent producer who then brought it to famed movie maker Dan O'Bannon, who read the script, liked it enough, but decided not to go with that and rewrote it himself, feeling that it was invading Romero's zombie movies a little too much. It felt like a sequel to Night of the Living Dead, which so happens that Romero was working on Dawn of the Dead at the same time. So Dan O'Bannon completely revamped and gave us the movie that we now have. Another interesting piece of trivia is in the scene where Tina is running away from her first encounter with Tarman up the stairs. Unknown to her, during her lunch break, director Dan O'Bannon actually replaced the step with a false step. And when she came back off lunch, he told her to more or less take a test run through it. She didn't know he was filming and got a very honest, real reaction of her running up the stairs and then falling through and not getting up right away. It was a very good scene. Some might think it was a very mean trick. Regardless, it's the scene that ended up in the movie, and it just lended a very believable element to a very tense scene. When the movie was made back in 1985, it was done with a rather modest budget of $4 million, and it grossed, in return when it released, about $14 million, which is pretty good. But one of the things that I find most endearing and memorable about this movie, aside from it being not only a horror movie, but a comedy, because there's a lot of kind of slapstick comedic moments in this movie. One of my favorite things about this film is its soundtrack, which was stuffed with The Cramps, 45 Grave, SSQ, very memorable themes that just made this movie more special and more of a time capsule of when it was made. I still listen to this soundtrack all the time. So I think overall I am going to rate this film a 4 out of 5 Garys. It is, like I said, one of my favorite zombie films. It is definitely a staple in my zombie collection, and I found that it in many ways is responsible for a lot of things that I am into today. In particular, when Trash turns into a zombie, she was definitely one of the building blocks in my t-shirt endeavor with Dead Girl Superstar. She was one of the major influences for that. So, with all that said, I am going to go with a 4 out of 5 Garys. So thank you so much for watching my opinion on this classic movie, Return of the Living Dead. If you have not seen it, make sure to check it out. It will not disappoint. It is funny. It is violent. There are some very memorable zombie special effects in it. And there's trash. And after you're done checking that out, make sure to jump back here and check out the rest of our videos. We do have quite a few of them, and we're going to keep doing this as long as possible because we love to do it. And while you are still on the internets, make sure to jump over to our official store, www.society6.com/misunderstoodourcompany. It is the official home of Geeks Speak Apparel and Dead Girl Superstar. And if you want to listen to even more content, why don't you check out the podcast that I am doing with two of my very close friends, Adam and David Miles. The name of the podcast is called They Cast from the Coast. It is all about horror and horror on the East Coast, and there is 3 ways to listen to it, with the 3 links in the description below: iTunes, Google Play, and here on YouTube. So make sure to check that out and send us your love, because it is a blast doing that podcast with those guys. And as always, make sure to like this video, subscribe to us, and leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.